Welcome all demigods, titans, centaurs, satyrs, and readers alike to 42 A Book Podcast. I'm your host, John Grimes, with my co-host,
Lindsay Hunts. In this episode, we will be discussing Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. We are so excited to share with you the hard work that we've put in this week, so sit back, relax,
don't forget your Master Bolt and Trident,
and enjoy 42 minutes of fantasy, adventure, mystery, and drama. Welcome everyone to the third episode of 42 A Book Podcast. Our first topic of discussion will be our Read It and Weep It segment. In this segment, we will discuss how the book made us feel.
So Lindsay, how did the book make you feel?
This book made me feel very nostalgic. It was my fourth time reading it, and I read it a lot when I was in 5th or 6th grade, and I really enjoyed it reading it again. I really didn't find that many things that I didn't like about it, which surprised me because it's with City of Bones, I found a lot of things reading it again I didn't like, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I realized while I was reading this book, I had read the first couple chapters a couple years before, but I guess I just put it down and stopped reading. But I'm very glad that we decided to read this book because it was a very good story of a hero and his friends going on a big quest. I just really loved it, and I really liked how the story had my attention the whole time. I really wished I would have jumped on the Percy Jackson and the Olympians bandwagon a whole lot earlier in life than I did just now.
Yeah, I really love the way this book is written. I feel like with a lot of books where you have a hero's journey, there are a lot of parts where you just get bored at some point. And I feel like Riordan, he's very good at making sure that there's a good amount of action, but also a good amount of character and story development. And I really enjoy how he writes when it comes to this type of hero quest type of thing.
Exactly. And you know that my one criticism that I always make is going to be on the realisticness of the story's narration. And I'm going to be honest, at the beginning of this book, I was very worried that it was going to sound like an adult writing in the mindset of a 6th grader. And it just, I was very worried about that. And I was like, oh my gosh, what trouble am I getting myself into? Because I'm just going to have a whole bunch of negative comments to make. But once Percy, Grover, and Annabeth left for the quest, something in Riordan's writing switched, and the whole story was just a lot more believable than it was at the beginning, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like he does a very good job of writing as a 6th grader, just the way, the way Percy's mind works. I feel like it definitely is not the way mine works, but I know when I read it in 6th grade, that seemed so realistic to me. And I like the way that Percy speaks in his mind, because I feel like it feels like a 6th grader, not an adult or a high schooler.
Yeah, and I also felt like he really mastered how to write as someone with ADHD or dyslexia Percy does.
I do too. I mean, obviously we can't speak for that, but I feel like he does a very good job of making it believable and just making it us understand that a little bit more, I guess. And I really enjoyed the way he writes as Percy. And I know I haven't read any of the other books anytime soon or recently, but I know as he progresses, he does well aging the characters as well.
Yeah, there is one critique that I had to make, and it was that while I was reading, I was looking up the Greek mythology stories that was going along with this. And so Percy Jackson is based off of Perseus, right? And Perseus actually isn't the son of Poseidon. He's the son of Zeus.
I think that it does get brought up later in the series. I could be wrong, but I don't think that it was intended as him being like it was intended to be based off of Perseus. I think it was just like a name that was from Greek mythology that it was just what Sally decided to name her son.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Let me look.
This book just like it just made my heart so happy the whole time. You know, like
I definitely agree.
I loved this book, and I'm really surprised I loved it.
It was very uplifting.
Yeah.
So, what did you think about the ending?
What do you mean the ending?
Like every episode we discuss what we thought about the ending. So what did you think about it? Like the very
ending, like with Luke?
Yes. All of the resolution, let's say that.
Okay. So, I liked the ending. I will say that, like, I, like, obviously wasn't surprised about the whole Luke twist. I know when I first read it I was. But the whole Ares fight, and I read this in the notes that you liked it. I personally did not like it. That's like the one thing I didn't like about this book.
Really?
I felt like Percy won a little too easy. Like obviously like he won and he did a good job, but like I feel like it could have been a little bit longer, and like I could have like felt like it wasn't too easy. I mean, like he won against like the god of war.
Right.
You know?
Like you wish that it had been more strategic than it was?
Yeah, I felt like it was like too easy.
Yeah, that definitely makes so I will say, like I didn't really care. Okay, so I've seen the movie before, but I haven't read the book, which was a definite mistake because the book is 100% better than the movie, but we will talk about that later.
Yeah.
But I didn't really care for how quickly the interaction with Luke happened, but I see like how that would get the reader to be waiting or get them to like pick up the next book immediately to figure out what happens with Luke.
Yeah, I felt that at first, whereas like it seems like it was like such a quick interaction, but also if you think about it, it was like almost like he like concluded the story almost, and then like he brought that back. So I feel like also with like it like had to be quick almost, because one, if this had been happening like in real life, like Luke wouldn't just be sticking around, like have that interaction last forever. And it was a good like ending to the story because like it's something that just like happens so quickly. You're like, I need to know what happens next.
Yeah. I kind of thought of this last chapter as more of an epilogue than the concluding chapter.
It definitely was.
One of the things that I'm actually most interested to like know when we read the next book, if we read the next book, is how Annabeth's attempt at staying with her father goes. Do you know, does that get brought up at all in the next couple books?
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay, good. Because I was definitely interested by her choice of writing to her dad and deciding to stay with him.
Yeah. I think that Annabeth particularly had a very good character development in this book. As you know, I really like characters that like turn out like they kind of start out as where you think are mean, but like end up being like kind of great characters in the end. But I feel like she ended up like she's not very likable in the beginning, but she ended up being very likable towards the end, and I feel like her character development was really, really good.
So while we're talking about this part of the book, what was your least favorite part of the book?
I think my least favorite part was the fight with Ares.
Interesting.
What was yours?
I will contend that later, but my least favorite part was when Poseidon claimed Percy as his son. I just thought it was like very thrown in there. A trident, like a symbol of a trident coming up above his head, just it's stretching the line for me.
Oh, okay. Well, I can see where you said that, but that's how kind of like all of the campers are claimed.
I know, but I'm just saying like that whole idea is just stretching the line, you know?
What do you mean?
It's not realistic at all. Like a symbol appears out of nowhere of a trident or whatever the symbol of the god is. It was very unbelievable for me and unrealistic.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It was, I was just reading that and I was like, where did that come from? Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
I think for me, I don't know about like the first time I read it, but for me, like since I've read most of Riordan's books, like that's just like something that's like I see it all the time in the books, and it was very normal to me.
Yeah. So next up on our list, we have our fan favorite segment in which we tell each other which characters we liked the most. So Lindsay, what character did you like the most?
I love Annabeth, and I've always loved Annabeth. She's been my favorite character from the beginning. I love how I love that she's very sure of herself. She might not like show it, but like she might not be deep down, but like she really does like have a lot of confidence in herself and her her what is the word? I don't know, like her strategies and everything, and she's very stubborn, which I know can be kind of like a flaw, but she does like stick to her gut. Mm-hmm. And she also she has like a soft side, and I like that.
Right. I also picked Annabeth as my favorite character of the book because I just thought like she was just very fundamentally strong as a character. Mm-hmm. And she was probably the most fundamentally strong out of any of the characters in the book. She knew what she wanted. She went after it. Right. And yeah, but at the same time, she also has her flaws that she bears like deep from others, which is also like very relatable to, because everyone does that. But we really got a glimpse of that with Annabeth. And I really like that.
I really, really, really love how Riordan writes flaws into his characters. I think he does it in a very human way, and that makes you like, and doesn't like deter you from the character at all, and it makes you like love them more. And I know he does like later in the series get into like fatal flaws and that type of stuff, but I really love the way he writes flaws into characters. I think it makes them very human and very relatable.
Yeah, it was very good. It was probably one of the best things about this book.
Right, the way he writes characters is just, it's very good, and it makes it hard for me to dislike very many characters, and like even like I know you don't like Zeus, but even then I don't like dislike any of them yet. Like, but when he does write characters that like are meant to be disliked, I do dislike them.
Yeah, so going with the whole me not liking Zeus thing, I think Zeus is just very overdramatic and arrogant, and he carries himself with this kind of swagger because he's the quote unquote king god. And mm-hmm. You know, if I were a king and I had lost my most powerful weapon and a teenager came and got it for me, I wouldn't be threatening him. Like, I wouldn't be threatening his life to him right after he just saved my butt, in a sense. And at the same time, he did it in front of his dad. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was just very bold of him.
Yeah, I agree. He's very what's the word? He's very much a narcissist, and like throughout the series you definitely see that. But I don't know. I still like, there's something about him that just makes me doesn't like, I don't hate him at all. And I don't know why, but
I'm very interested in finding out more about Kronos and the Titans.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in that.
If we continue with this series, you definitely will, and I think that it's written very, very well.
That's I don't even know what word to use, but it's a relief. That's what I'm trying to use, because I was very worried that it was just going to drop off there, but I had hope that it wouldn't, and I'm very glad it's not.
Yeah, it's kind of like, in a way, like the series kind of works like Harry Potter, where each book has its own like subplot, you know, mm-hmm. But in the back, like Kronos is working working everything, you know, and kind of got control of everything, and in that sense, like he's in all of the books.
Yeah. So, what did you think about Percy as a main character?
Okay, I don't know, like, I think in this book, I definitely don't like him as much as I do later on, because in later on he has like my whole heart. But in this book, I feel like he was just okay. Like, he's definitely not my favorite.
He definitely kind of annoyed me in this book.
Right.
Yeah. It felt like he was just speaking to speak and trying to act like he knew things when he really didn't.
Yeah. I definitely understand that. And it's just, it feels like, I don't know, it's just weird to, like, read him in this book when he's, like, my second favorite character of all time throughout all of Riordan's series. And it's just weird to read this book and be like, he's not that great of a character in this book.
Right. He's not very interesting.
No, he's not. I do, however, I love Sally Jackson.
Yes.
She is, like, the most purest form of a soul I've ever seen. And I just love her so much.
She was a very good character, I have to say.
I feel like another thing with Riordan writing characters, he does a very good job of, like, not having Sally in there enough, but, like, us seeing, like, how good of a person she is in just this moment of time we have with her.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Well, so John, what were your opinions for our standing ovation segment? What part stood out to you?
Okay, so I know we talked about this earlier, about you hating this part, or at least not liking it. Mm-hmm. But my favorite part was the battle between Ares and Percy on the Los Angeles beach. And I don't really know why I really liked this. I think it was mostly, I felt it was more of Percy understanding his power that he has.
Yeah, that's what I definitely like most about that part.
He definitely just understood more, and that's what I liked about it. I also really liked how I liked his sword, just thinking about his sword with the skull in the middle. I liked how the mortal people saw it as a shotgun. I loved just that whole part. It was just very good to me.
I think, yeah, the best part of that scene is definitely Percy becoming, like, in touch with, like, the ocean and, like, his heritage. And, like, I think that part of me made him, like, it's just, like, from seeing him in this whole series that it made me very proud of him, like, because I felt like he was finally, like, understanding, like, I don't know, like, his parentage and, like the power that he has. Because I feel like throughout this book, he slowly became in touch with it, but then, like, he really, like, understood, like, he can control water and, like, he can do so many cool things with it.
Mm-hmm. So, if you could pick, like, one part of this book that really stood out to you, what would it be?
I don't, like, the parts that stood out to me was kind of, like, the middle section, like, as they were going on their quest, because, like I said before, I really loved how Riordan wrote the action and how it was very well put in the book, and there was not too much of it, but there was enough in between the action that just really caught my attention as well.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're fine. One part that I think really, really stood out to me was when they were in the truck with the animals. I think that really, it definitely showed the heart in our characters, because the way they felt about the animals. Especially
Grover. You could just see, like, the connect and the pain that he felt with the animals as being
Grover definitely has, like, the biggest heart ever, and definitely. I just love him.
He reminds me a lot of Ron Weasley.
He does, yeah. I didn't even think about that, but he does.
So, like I said last episode, I thought that Rory Power had a very good middle ground of descriptive words, but Rick Riordan had the best sense of describing things that I've ever seen in anything. It was just so easy to read.
Yeah, I as a person, I really struggle when it comes to, like, reading, like, fights and stuff, because it's hard to wrap my brain around what's happening, but he makes it so easy to visualize what's happening, like even like sword fights, like, he makes it easy to understand, like, when I know nothing about, like, sword fights, you know, like, it's just, he makes things so easy to visualize, and in a way that, like, I feel like I'm in this story. I love the way he describes things.
Yeah. Personally, I couldn't pick just one moment that stood out to me throughout this whole book, because, like, this whole book was just so good that
Yeah.
I can't even just pick one. But I did really enjoy the time that the three spent in the underworld, because I really liked how Riordan kind of took his imagination of how the underworld would run by, like, how Hades would run the underworld. I just really enjoyed that because it 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 wasn't realistic. It was more humorous than realistic, if anything. And I feel like that was just a very good part of the book that I enjoyed.
I agree, because there were a lot of connections to what happens later in the underworld, and it just like, it made me like feel like everything that's like gonna happen, and like you don't know what's gonna happen obviously, but like there's so many connections that we just like saw, and like it's just crazy to me that you don't know like everything you saw and like what's later gonna happen. I love when writers do that, when they just like know what's gonna happen and they just plant seeds, and then later when you go and reread it, you're like, oh my god.
Right. So what were your thoughts on the three-headed dog?
I love the three-headed dog.
The dog literally has my whole heart. I love him.
I swear.
Whenever I would read, like, he tilted his head, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally gonna start crying. This dog is so sweet. And when I have to admit that I did laugh when the dog sat on the dead people and they just vaporized in midair.
Twist on Cerberus that like no one was expecting. I was definitely expecting it to be a very like big scary dog, and it definitely wasn't.
I do think that you kind of disconnected there for a little bit, because I only heard little snippets of what you said. So could you repeat yourself?
I said that he definitely gave Cerberus a humorous twist, because you know you expect Cerberus to be such like a big scary dog, and then like he was just a dog that wanted to play with the red ball and stuff.
Right. And I thought it was funny how like he wasn't at all interested by was it a stick that but then once that red ball came out, oh my gosh, he was ready to play.
Right. And I think also, like, at that point, I really loved Annabeth and her courage, because she was like, you guys can go ahead without me. I'll figure out how to get there.
Right.
And also later on, when both Grover and Annabeth were willing to sacrifice themselves for Percy's mom, it was very admirable.
Right. I have to admit, Charon, Charon, he was he was a very funny character as well. He stood out to me in this part. He was just very humorous, and I liked him.
I honestly think Hades is kind of a humorous character as well.
He is.
And I know, I like when they were talking about Charon, and he was like, the minute he got into his Italian suits or whatever it was, he hasn't been able to give it a break or whatever. I don't remember exactly, but I think there are a lot of humorous parts in a lot of the characters that he writes very well.
So I have a question, because this Greek mythology story really interests me. Do we ever get to see more of Persephone in the story?
I definitely don't think she's very prevalent, but I think, I'm trying to say this in a way without like ruining anything. I think when we get more in depth with Hades later on, we do see a little bit of her, and I don't remember. There's another series like after Percy Jackson that has like Percy and Annabeth and everybody in it. We might see her a little bit in that series as well, but she's not very prevalent.
I'm very interested by the story of Persephone, Demeter, and Hades. It's just very interesting to me.
It's one of my favorite Greek mythology myths, and it's just one of my favorites to read about.
Yeah, it's very interesting, like all the pomegranates, and it's just a good story to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So what did you think about, do you have any opinions on any of the other Greek gods or goddesses?
Oh, I I really love how Riordan wrote Percy's dad. I
Mm.
felt like the way like he introduced them, like with neither of them loving or hating each other, was a great way to start the relationship out. I feel like they were both so unsure of each other, and I think it really gives us enough time throughout the series to figure out how that relationship's going to progress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like he easily could have written it out where Percy could have like immediately hated him, and he didn't do that.
Right, I definitely agree with that. There was another part. Oh, the iris messaging. That was so cool.
Yeah.
It was just so cool to me.
That's definitely we definitely see that a lot more later
Good,
on.
because that really interested me. And while I knew that Luke was stabbing them in the back during that part, it was just very cool to think that I could talk to someone through a mist of water.
Iris, I think, is one of the coolest, like, minor goddesses. I think she's a goddess. I think it's a girl. Could be wrong. But I think she's definitely one of the coolest minor goddesses, and she really sparks my interest, and I'm glad we do see a little bit more of her later on in the series.
Great.
But
so I have a question. Do you know if Riordan has any books on Roman mythology? I haven't done any.
like, yeah,
He does?
he definitely does. The series that follows this one, it mashes together both Roman and Greek mythology.
Oh, okay.
And it's really cool the way it plays out, and I definitely like it a lot more than this series.
Oh, really?
Yes, though his writing in that series is immaculate. It's so good.
Well, we might have to look into that series. But our last point of discussion is our look through the camera segment. We will be discussing our thoughts and feelings of the movie adaptations of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. So,
oh boy.
I don't know who decided to buy this movie, the rights to this movie, and change the story all around. But to whoever did it, you suck.
Yeah. I think I would like to say, like, if you separate the movie from the book, it's a good movie. But when you take it and you put it next to the book, it's just like, what? Like, why did you do this?
Right. Like, have you even read the book, or were you just going based off of the summary on the back?
Right. I've always really thought of this. This is nothing to do with the movie, but I've always really thought that Percy Jackson would make an amazing TV series. And I just really wish that would happen. But I'm just afraid after this movie. This movie is terrible.
It's so bad. I liked the casting, except for Percy. I feel like he just seems like the Walmart version of Zac Efron to me. And he just wasn't a very good actor. And whoever did his costuming and his hair and makeup, you need to figure out what you're doing, because his hair is so big compared to his small head. He looks like he's about to topple over. Like, he looks like a brunette version of Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I see. I liked the casting for Percy. I did not like the casting for Annabeth at all.
Interesting.
Because, you know, she's supposed to, like, all of Athena's children are supposed to be blonde-headed and gray-eyed, and she is brown-eyed and brown-haired.
No,
and
she's blue-eyed.
Is she? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was just like, is this even Annabeth? Like,
right.
And I felt like the way Annabeth did not feel like Annabeth in the movie at all.
She was even more hard-headed at the beginning, and it got to the point where it was unbearable.
Right. Yeah, I think Annabeth's casting is definitely the worst, and I love how they tried to fix it in this second movie by pleasing fans by just dyeing her hair blonde. I think that definitely fixed every mistake they've ever made.
Exactly.
It's just atrocious. Like, I hate how they aged the characters, first of all.
Yes.
Because one, if they had done the story right, and if they hadn't aged the characters, it could have been similar to a Harry Potter franchise, and they really missed out on that.
Right.
Because there's just so much of the story you could have had, like, with the movies, a very good fan base, and they just messed it up so bad.
Did you know that the director for this movie was actually the director of Sorcerer's Stone?
Really?
Yes.
That surprises me.
Honestly, it doesn't surprise me because they changed so many things in Sorcerer of Stone that they changed so many things here that I was like, okay, I'm not even surprised with this director anymore.
Wow.
I also have to say that they completely removed Ares from the storyline and made Luke like the main villain of the movie. And I just didn't like that at all because,
right.
Like they made Luke seem like he was playing more of a role than he actually was.
Yeah, and I don't really want to talk much about Luke because I know a lot that happens with Luke, but I definitely, like, if they wanted to progress in the movie the way they progress in the books, that was definitely just not a good idea.
Right. Like, I really just don't understand why writers of movies and directors of movies just can't leave the story how it is in the book.
I don't either. Like, I know, like, there was a point when you were talking about, like, did they replace the scene with, like, the Hydra or something, and it was confusing me, and I know, like, because I was like, I know in the books there's a scene with the Hydra, and I was like, is it really? I don't think it's in the first book, and I think it's in, like, the second or the third one.
Yeah.
But like why would you take something out of the second or third book when it's just, a lot of the things are just like, it just confuses me, like, why you would change the book that much. Like, they didn't even keep the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, even, like, the way, like, I guess this is kind of really nitpicky, but the way Camp Half-Blood was in the movie did not, like, it wasn't the way I imagined it at all.
Exactly. Like, where are the strawberries? There's no strawberries here. It's not peaceful. This is violence.
Right. Like, as much as, like, everybody loves Camp Half-Blood, it's kind of, like, a very violent camp.
It is.
And, like, with, like, the climbing wall and the lava thing, like, I don't remember seeing that. It might have been there, actually. Never mind. That might have been in the second movie. But it's just, nothing was the same.
The casting, I have to say, for Chiron was so good. He was very good.
I really liked his casting and Grover's casting.
Yeah. Those two
I think they did really good.
Exactly how I imagined them.
And I feel like I remember liking Dionysus. But I don't remember.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't even in the first movie, was he?
Nope.
Oh my god, he wasn't. No.
And that was one of the other things that I was upset about because, like, his story at the beginning was just so funny that he was the god of, like, was he the god of wine and he was forbidden to drink?
Yeah.
That's so funny to me.
I love his character throughout the series. I feel like he's such a lighthearted character, and he does end up bringing a little bit of depth to his character, but his character is so good, and I just love his character.
I'm so glad that you said that, like, they bring more depth to him because he's literally the shallowest man that I have ever seen in a book because there's just absolutely nothing. He's like bread and butter. It's just bland.
Yeah, I do think they do bring a little bit in the first book where you do see that he's like, he does sit with his kids for whenever they eat, and I think I really enjoyed that because you see the gods are so disconnected with all of their children, yet you see Dionysus and he sits with he doesn't have that many, but you see him sitting with his kids, and I really liked that, and I think that does show a little bit of his character.
Right, and I also really liked how they would, like, scrape their offerings into the fire. That was really cool to me.
Yeah, I think they definitely, Rick Riordan definitely brings a lot of, like, the old ancient Greek ways into, like, a very modern way. And I do like those, like, tiny things that, like, have been brought back.
I also really, I really disliked this part in the movie. It was, compared to the book at least. So I would understand, like you said, if the movie was a standalone movie, it would make sense for the 600th floor of the Empire State Building to be like a business building, you know, like it would be marble floors and blah, blah, blah. Like it's a roofed building. But in the book, it just makes sense that Olympus would be like the Olympus that we see in movies like Disney's Hercules.
Right.
I feel like they really lacked on that. And it might have been maybe budgets because, you know, they didn't have that much money for CGI. But at the same time, it was just so lacking than what they could have done.
Yeah, that's like also another thing I really liked about the book is the way that Olympus was described, and I just love the way it was written, and I love the way I can see it because that's like how I would picture Olympus to be, you know.
Right.
And I also like how it was compared that Hades' castle was almost exactly like the one in Olympus.
Yeah, I also thought this is back to the book, but when they're at Waterland, is that what it was called?
It was something like that. I don't remember.
When they were at the water park, and the god had set up like cameras, and it was just so funny to me. Like that was one of the funniest parts of the book, to think like they were on TV, and if that hadn't been them, it was going to be a Greek god and a Greek goddess.
Yeah, I forgot about that storyline of Hephaestus wanting to like kind of just like embarrass Ares and Aphrodite. I think that's kind of like it's so funny, and I think that Riordan brings like a very good modern twist to the gods, and the fact that like the gods have like TV. It's very human to me, and I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah. So I have a question, and I don't know if you remember this.
Okay.
Didn't notice it. In the movie, was Clarice mentioned at all?
No, she was in the second movie, but not in the first movie.
Because, I don't know, that's just, like, stupid to me that they wouldn't even mention her, because I feel like she was one of the few people that Percy was going on the quest to try and prove wrong. And they should have added her because she was very crucial to the plot line.
Yeah, that's what I hate about the second movie as well, is because they try to fix so many things they did wrong, but like, they did it in the wrong way by adding like Clarice and Dionysus and like all these characters that they forgot about, but then they like messed the plot up again. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But the movie is just like the fact that they try to fix it in the first place is just a bad idea.
Right. And I don't like how they completely wiped out the whole thing about Kronos and Tartarus. Like, there's no mention of it at all.
Right. And it was a lot of bad planning in their part if they wanted to keep the franchise going.
Right. I don't exactly remember, but what happened with the shoes in the movie compared to the book?
Were there even shoes in the
movie? The flying shoes?
Yeah, were they in the movie?
I'm pretty sure they were.
I honestly don't remember. It's been such a long time.
I thought there were books in the movie. Or not books, shoes in the movie, sorry.
There might have been. I feel like, you know what?
What?
I feel like, didn't Percy wear them?
Yeah, that's what I noticed, is that when I was reading the book, was that he didn't keep them for himself, he gave them to Grover.
Yeah.
And I also thought that they were like, they did a very bad job with the whole Medusa storyline in the movie, because she was a good villain. Like, you expected it because, you know, you've got to have a villain at some point. But at the same time, you didn't expect it. And you wouldn't expect like a grandma to be Medusa. So I was, the fact that they just kind of made that into like the horror aspect of the movie, I didn't really like that.
Yeah, I agree. I really like how Medusa was written in the book, where she wanted Percy to like have like kind of like a peaceful death, whereas she doesn't like Annabeth because she's the daughter of Athena, and she wanted to treat her differently, and you just don't see that in the movie.
Right.
And you don't see Uncle Ferdinand in the movie, which I don't know.
You do.
That part always...
You do.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was watching it today.
Wow.
Yeah, because he was like, he's even got the same mole, and there was a giant mole on his forehead. Yeah, and that's when Grover realizes that they're in trouble.
Yeah.
But, I was going to say something. Oh, I don't like I don't like at all how they make Percy and Luke battle on, was it like the top of the Empire State Building or the top of another building?
So.
That was just so stupid.
Yeah.
It just, how would Luke have gotten to New York City without being under suspicion by Chiron or Dionysus or anyone?
I don't know. It's so stupid, and it's just like speaking about Luke again, like it's just so out of character for Luke. I know you don't know much about Luke, but it is out of character for Luke, and it's just like I can't stand the way they handled any of the plot points in that movie.
Right. I just feel like all young adult writers need to never, ever, 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 ever sell their movie rights to absolutely anyone, because they are going to butcher it, and they're going to ruin it, and they're going to make it something that it's not. And it's in City of Bones. It happened in the first and most of the Harry Potter series. And books are just way better than movies. I do know
right now, Rick Riordan is trying to get Disney to take the rights.
Really?
Because, yeah, I think Disney would honestly do a really good job with it.
Yeah. Don't they have rights to some of his books?
Yeah, they're under Disney Hyperion. Like, they're published through Disney Hyperion.
I hope, fingers crossed, maybe Disney can come in and save. Because I just remember watching the movie on Nickelodeon. That's where I remember I first saw the movie. Was it a Nickelodeon movie?
No, it wasn't, but it was definitely a movie that I could see being on Nickelodeon.
It was, because that's where I remember seeing it for the first time, and I was like, okay, this is kind of good, because like I hadn't read the book yet, and that was stupid of me. But I also need to make a comment. Due to scheduling issues, our schedule for our show has changed a little bit. So our next episode is a special guest episode, and the episode after that was going to be a special guest episode, but the second special guest episode is actually not going to work right now due to scheduling conflicts. So we are going to make that the season finale, and we're just going to take everything that was after that and bump it up. So we've got it all figured out. You can find more information on our Twitter and Instagram, but that's what we have right now.
Yeah. Well, I think this wraps up our episode today. We hope you enjoyed your time with us discussing Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief.
Make sure to come back next week, Monday, May 11th, for our discussion on Michael Vey, Prisoner of Cell 25 by Richard Paul Evans with our special guest, Ethan Wheeler.
For more information, follow our Instagram and Twitter at 42_book.
You can also find us at anchor.fm/42-book-podcast.
See you next week at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
This episode was brought to you by Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast and is at zero cost to use. Tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer allow you to expand the creativity of your podcast. Distribution has never been so easy, and it's done for you. Anchor distributes your podcast so it can be heard from Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more listening services. Anchor also allows you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor is everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started today.